Mr. Akins, Mrs. Turner Birch, Mrs. Carter.
Here. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Go ahead and read.
Yes, please.
Visitors are always welcome at our board meetings. If you wish to address the board, please complete the form provided upon arrival at the meeting and give to the treasurer. Oral presentations are limited to 3 minutes each so that the meeting may proceed uninterrupted. Please silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Item number 2 is our one plan goals. Please read those goals at your leisure. Item number 3 is ordinance participation. Do we have any parts to read today? No. All right, thank you. Item number 4 is approval of our minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion to approve.
Second. Are we doing July, we doing them separately or together?
4.01, I'm sorry. The motion was to approve the minutes for July 10th, 2024. And Sharon moved it, and Mrs. Carter second. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter. Yes. Mrs. Boynton.
Yes, motion passes 3-0. Item number 4.02, approval of the minutes for July 29th, 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
Sorry, motion to approve?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Roll call, please. Oh, wait a minute. What was it? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have my computer and I'm reading, and I don't have my glasses either. This will be a good meeting.
We're good.
Did you move it?
Yes. Yes, okay, so Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
and Mrs. Birch, are you ready to vote yet?
I am.
Okay, Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is our consent agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it is presented?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Do we have any questions or comments about the consent agenda?
No.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. Dr. Johnson, did you want to speak on anything on this agenda?
I don't think so.
All right, I'm trying to find a card. Is that
That's
fine?
mine.
Okay, all right, gotcha. So let's we're gonna get this. Item number 6 is our superintendent's report. Dr. Johnson, please.
Good evening, Board President. Good evening, Board President, Vice President, and Board members. Under the superintendent's report, you will find 7 recommendations. Under 6.01, there was a request for uncompensated time. I think it previously was on the board as compensated time, so now there needs to be a vote for uncompensated. The employee is requesting. After the contract was ratified, we need to update the 25-26 calendar, so you'll see that there. The only change is that week before Thanksgiving break, so we have to make that adjustment. We asked for your approval 6.03 of the following Title I tutor. You will see more come, but those are that's what we have so far. Under 6.04, we ask for your approval to support the following termination recommendation. Under 6.05, the administrative substitutes, those are just on hand just in case we need it. And then 6.06, we ask of your again, in just the fiscal agent for Safely Home. But we still have to put that before the board each year. And then 6.07, we ask of your approval of the contract for the following service provider for a student.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson. Item number 6.01, could I have a motion to amend this request for the leave from the July 10th, 2024 board meetings? Yes. So we're voting for uncompensated leave.
So a motion to amend a request for leave from the July 10th, 2024 board meeting.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter, second by Mrs. Turner-Burt. Could I just have some clarification, again? This is for uncompensated. All right.
Deny.
Yes.
Mrs. Carter? Oh, my brain is like, go ahead, I'm sorry. Yes. Mrs. Turner Birch?
No.
Mrs. Boynton?
No.
Mrs. Macklin?
No.
Did you say no? I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
said, yeah, I
She
said
said
deny.
deny.
Deny, no.
Okay, deny, okay, I'm sorry. So the motion did, fail, 4-0, thank you. All right, I'm gonna get this together, all right?
It's hard to read.
All right.
It's okay.
All right. Item number 6.02 is the 2025-26 calendar revision. Could I have a motion to approve that calendar, please?
Motion to approve 2025-2026 calendar revisions.
Second. Moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Have any questions for her? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter? Yes. Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Turner Birch?
I mean, she said she could Zoom, but because we don't have the computers for seeing the calendar, so.
So I think the only change was
She told us the one change. It was one change, that's what she was saying.
The week of Thanksgiving break.
Okay.
Typically, kids have school on Monday, or there's Tuesday, but this coming year is, they're off that whole week.
Right.
And then, so we need to match that for the 25-26 school year too.
Gotcha, okay. Yes.
Did I say yes?
You did.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. All right. Item number 6.03, approval of the Title I tutors. Could I have a motion to approve the tutors as this is presented, please? 6.03.
Motion to approve Title I tutors as presented.
Second. It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Turner Birch. Any questions regarding the tutors? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. Item number 6.04, termination. Could I have a motion to approve the termination as it is presented?
So moved.
Second. It's moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Any questions for it? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
No.
Motion passes 3-1. Item number 6.05, administrative substitute. Could I have a motion to approve the administrative substitute as presented?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Mrs. Turner Birch and second by Mrs. Macklin. Questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. Item number 6.06, service contract is presented by the Executive Director of Academic Achievement. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
Motion to approve.
Second. It's moved by Mrs. Carter, second by Mrs. Macklin. Any questions?
So what is capstone?
Anyone want to talk about capstone? Dr. Johnson? I did read it when I was on home. 6.06.
6.06% home.
No,
This is the
Just
existing.
0.7.
6.
We're on 6.6 though.
We were on 6.06.
Yeah, we're on 6.
Oh, I'm ahead of myself. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, 6.6.
That's the next one.
I have a first and a second. You ready for roll call?
Mhm. Yeah, my question is the first.
Okay. Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0, thank you, board. 6.07, service contract from the Executive Director of Human Resources. Motion to approve 6.07.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter, second by Mrs. Macklin. Any questions about the service contract?
Yeah, I was
Ms.
just,
Capstone.
it, like, what is this Capstone Academy? Is this for, I don't want to say anymore. This is a special,
I can answer that after by me explaining what it is. I don't know if I can do that in public session.
oh, okay. Okay.
That makes sense. But I can explain to each of you individually what the facility is.
Okay. But it's needed.
It is required by law.
Any other question?
I'm good. Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0, thank you, board. Item number 7 is our treasurer's report.
Board President, Mrs. Boynton, Vice President, Mrs. Macklin, I have one item on the agenda tonight, and it's the then and now purchase orders. It is a separate attachment, did not print the agenda with that on there. It's the standard then and nows. There are quite a few, and this is because this is the first time we've brought them since June for the new fiscal year.
What is it?
Yeah, these are, yeah, this is the separate list.
This is the,
It's on the agenda online, but it wasn't on the printout when we printed it originally.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to tell Ms. Turner Brooks, those these are the ones that we're voting on.
No.
Okay, could I have a motion to approve, please?
Motion to approve.
Second?
It's been moved by Mrs. Macklin and second by Mrs. Carter. Any questions for it in regards to the purchase orders? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
and Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0, thank you, board. Item number 8 is Board of Education, new business, old businesses, and we're gonna have a presentation, 8.01, GPD, updates on our facilities and projects. And we have Abby and Russell, so if you're ready, we're ready.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is. I get nervous. I don't mess with stuff. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. So we just wanted to come tonight and give a quick update. A couple topics to cover today. Cosmetology renovation update. That's full steam ahead. A couple weeks left before school starts, so construction is rapidly moving forward. Put a couple photos together in here just on the update of that. GPD will be doing a punch list this week or next. Final inspections will be happening that same week, which we expect occupancy for that space as well. So timing up pretty close to the start of school, but still progressing on our way in the next week or two.
It's
I don't-
over today, it looked good, so if you have a chance to walk over and look
Yeah.
at how's everything.
I understand too, the documentation for application and licensing has been submitted, so that's moving quickly. Inspection will be happening in the next week or two at that, and should time up pretty closely with the start of school, so. fast and furious towards that finish line, but it's headed that direction. I included just a couple photos of the COS space. There's new LVT flooring going in on their theory classroom, a new opening to connect the lab with the theory classroom, so it's really starting to brighten up, look really nice, and that connection between the two spaces was really important to make sure that they didn't have to go back out into the hallway, they could pass through and study and go to the lab directly. HVAC and plumbing is complete. That plumbing inspection was really integral to the application submission, so that was done August 1st, so that was really important. And then again, punch list scheduled next week, and final inspections as well in occupancy. What we really wanted to share today was just an update on the site plans. We've been working really hard with the core team to develop these site plans. We recently had a meeting with the safety forces, so fire, police, mayors, and GPD, and some other folks, I guess, from the core team, had an opportunity to review these site plans. We've been working with a top-down view and really wanted to expand that for the board to see tonight. So I'll share kind of where that's headed right now, and would be happy to answer questions as we talk about this. Some of you got a preview of this weekend at a community meeting, so it might be duplicate for you, but new to others. So for the 6 through 8 campus, you're familiar with the site. We're actually just off to the right-hand side in the board office. This is west of Northfield Road. Through our ADT and through our visioning session, we really talked about where this building wanted to sit. We started pushing it back off Northfield Road, we put it closer to, and it really settled just behind the existing St. Peter Chanel site, building site. So what that does is it gives us some breathing room off Northfield with the traffic. It really is about the same distance off the existing Bedford Height to Northfield, as Northfield is the new 6-8 building. And what it does also is maintains the existing fields on the site. So we have a track and field existing to remain. We're showing an athletic size field that could potentially be done in the future. So what we're doing is really just carving out areas for development in the future to be available for those students at the 6 through 8 level. I wish I could point, maybe I can. Do you want me to Vanna?
Oh, I can.
Oh, go ahead, yeah, great.
You're gonna Vanna white for us?
So we'll start with buses, Abby. So off of Northfield Road, we're proposing making a connection from Bonnieview up to the access drive off Northfield. That was kind of a recommendation from Ms. Boynton at a core meeting to really help separate traffic from vehicular to bus traffic, right? So we have no interaction between all those cars and the buses. So that drive will align with Bonnieview. That could be a part and play into our master plan with the high school soon. So we really thought that was a good idea to align those roads, working with ODOT and traffic engineers to really make sure that was a good move. So buses will travel west around the existing loop of the Peter Chanel site and access the back of the building in a separate lot. That separate lot will both be important in location because that provides additional parking. So that additional parking could be striped both ways. So bus parking and traffic parking or visitor parking for athletics, as well as any additional parking that could be required for events. You'll notice that the athletics are towards the west. We're also thinking that athletics inside the building would be on that back side of the building. So we're starting to organize the building program to really facilitate locker rooms and what else might be needed on the site. There's a star for the bus drop off and pickup. So in the back, buses would drop off, students would enter the back of the building, and what's in the back of the building would be student dining access and gym. So that's important. We've learned that for breakfast and that early morning drop off, that kids could go directly to those resources and not kind of in the front of the building at the kind of main entry. So this is separate and unique, and that's pretty special for that back entry. On the front side of the building, the main entry for vehicular traffic off Northfield Road, parents, staff, students, they would pull in off of Northfield Road on the south access, turn north, and that blue dash line really becomes the parent drop-off line. It's really long and creates a really long loop, and we like that it doesn't interfere with bus traffic. And if you've been to Heskett, you know that intersection and that traffic is really a lot happening all at once. So bus traffic won't interfere with what's happening in the front parking lot. And then separate to that, there's a separate star for the Board of Education entry, because that is an important piece of this building. What we're trying to do is separate those two stars as much as we can from the front entry of the 6-8 and the Board of Education. We want it to be distinct, separate, and unique, and we don't want those two front entries to be confused to someone coming to the building. So there'll be a separate signage to say, come here for the board, come here for the 6-8 building, and there'll be a separate entry for that piece and separate parking. We are showing in gray existing parking. Those are important to note because concerns about parking always get brought up, and I think it's important to say that we're going to maintain as much of that existing parking, even if it's not new paving. It's there for you guys, and that could be used for overflow for the high school while that construction project is happening, or overflow for the 6-8, or overflow for the board parking. So we're just kind of showing those existing parking lots to remain, and we think it's a really big asset to the site having that left over from the Chanel building. And then exterior, I'll just kind of, so that's the traffic flow. And then exterior wise, we're starting to suggest some outdoor learning spaces behind the building. And what's nice about that little nook behind the building is not only is it shielded from Northfield and traffic, it gives us an opportunity to have some active learning and passive learning out there. Dr. Johnson recommended just screening that with a fence, which is a great idea. We're gonna do that. But in the building plan, there's art spaces, and so we have concrete shown that you can go outside, maybe do some outdoor learning from your art spaces. And then there's some special ed spaces in there too, and we didn't want to make that such an active space. So that is more of a passive. There'll be grass and shrubs and maybe some screening that if there is some activity or outdoor learning happening, it's not being a distraction for those students that might need some special attention or some more focus. So those things are happening. It's really small in the plan, but we're thinking about that as we lay out the site plan. I'll move on to the PK2, and if you guys have questions, I can always come back. So the PK2 site is obviously a little more challenging from a logistics standpoint because Heskett, it will exist for some time in the future and will be converted to a 3-5 school. So what we initially did during the bond campaign was showed it to the east of Heskett where that existing football field was. But as we studied, we learned, we gathered information, we know that there's some wetlands in the backside of the site, and it's important to make sure we have a presence off of Perkins Road. So what we did was kind of shifted the building north, gave some presence to Perkins, and whether that building, Heskett, remains there for 1 year, 10 years, or 15 years, there's always going to be a presence off of Perkins. It will stand alone and kind of hold its own, I guess, in terms of a building. In the future, when that building goes down and phase 2 is realized, that building would be demolished and still the new PK2 would have a great presence on Perkins, and frankly, a little bit additional parking would be available because of what we have left after Heskett's demolished. From bus traffic standpoint, we explored the idea, because again, at Heskett, bus and traffic is kind of a mess on the west side of that building. So we said, well, how can we separate the buses and make it a combined bus drop-off for PK2 and 3-5? And so the back of Heskett became ideal location for bus traffic. And we said, how can we get back there? Can we go to the south side of Heskett and create an access point off of that? And the challenge with that is we walked it, there's a gas connection at Heskett, back of neighbors' properties and fences, and we thought it'd be best to continue to explore. The Bedford City School District owns a residential property off of Columbus, and so we thought, let's explore that a little further. Doing due diligence, we found there was an apple orchard, and we had to explore additional soil borings to make sure there wasn't soil conditions that we needed to stay away from. Fortunately, those have subsided, and we're proposing to access the site from Columbus Road with site lighting and to make sure that that's safe, and potentially add a gate down there so that passerbys don't come into the back side of the campus. So we'll make sure that's protected off of Columbus.
So that would be the entrance for both schools?
Correct. So that way, if there's
Buses.
for
Well,
buses.
no, that's what I'm saying, like, the bus is right,
Yeah.
because the bus is right now on, Perkins is just,
Yeah.
heck, every day.
We're- We'll put draft on this just as a side note,
Right,
but like
if that's possible, that's amazing.
no doubt this will improve traffic. We will still have our traffic engineers study this and improve it, but just from a logistics standpoint, getting buses off of that road and off of the 3 through 5, future 3 through 5 and PK2 access is going to be a huge benefit. And then we did the same blue line dashed off of Perkins. So from a visitor standpoint, parent and drop off, Abby, if you want to kind of run through like the loop. So you'd come in the spine the same way you do now. PK2 would have the advantage that we're extending that loop for drop off and extend up through to the PK2 entrance, and the exit would still be the same as they do now from Heskett, and exit along that municipal exit onto Perkins. So we're trying to extend that really long drop off because we understand if there's a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old in that car, we want to make sure that drop off is along the entire face of that building. And so you'll notice the same type of stars. So we have a PK entrance at the north side of the building for the PK wing. That could be designed as a vestibule for separate drop off at different times of the day. A K2 entrance there with central admin. And then the bus drop off, because we wanted to shorten the amount of little legs walking to the main entry directly next to the bus drop off. In between there, we have some exterior development. We're going to have some playground and outdoor learning space designated on the site, which is shadowed by the building a little bit, which is a good thing, kind of screening them from the traffic and from sight of the road. So 1st and 2nd grade outdoor play on the south side with potentially some outdoor learning environment outside of the media center in connection from the student dining. I think you guys already understand there's a 14-foot grade change from one side of the site to the other. So we're already dealing with a lot of slope. And one way we can do that intelligently or intentionally is to build like a seating so that outside of the media center, there could be some amphitheater style seating to work with the grade as it slopes up to the kind of northeast side of the site. And we're showing that as some arches right now. And then the pre-K and K in between those spaces would be their dedicated outdoor play. We did have an opportunity to review this site plan with safety forces, police and fire, and they did have a couple recommendations, so we're going to take those back to the drawing board and include those. One in which we have a delivery and access drive and emergency personnel the ability to go around the building. And we had that per code, but they wanted that to be like a 2-lane, 20-foot wide instead of 10 per code. So it's a great recommendation. We'll make sure we include that as we develop these drawings. And then future proofing, I think one thing that was worth noting, pre-K wing on the northwest corner, K next to it, and then the 1-2 stacked 2-story solution really gave the site an opportunity to have some additional breathing room. So in the future, if expansion and enrollment goes the direction we think it could and increasing, there's opportunities in the future, years down the road, that we're kind of planning on areas that a connection could be made, an addition could be made, and there's site for that on this plan. Abby, did I miss anything on the PK2 site? The site plan is, so that's kind of how it's shaking out. We're starting to share it with more people now. The community on Saturday, the Board of Education today, safety forces last week. But there's a lot of information kind of still coming in. And, we did have a pencils down for the 6 through 8 school on July 31st. So that was our first phase submission. It was kind of the first time we're going to put our pencils down. And when I share that schedule, there's a lot of steps along that way. This was our first time to say, Panzeca Construction, could you provide a cost estimate for where we're at now? In the coming weeks, we'll have another update for you on where we're at with that first phase submission for both schools.
That was fun.
Thank you, Anna.
This will be just a brief update. Russell mentioned we submitted our first set of documents for the 6 through 8. So we will be submitting that same point in time for the pre-K through 2 on the 14th. So we had those deadlines staggered just a little bit. What's really good for us is that we're going to use the time while our estimates are being performed to continue to develop renderings of what the exterior of the building could look like.
We think it's important to share those with you as soon as we can, but we also think it's really important that when we share those, we can commit to you that the design in front of you is tracking along on budget. So that's why we're timing that conversation to fall right in line with when the estimates are ready. So as we're working on that, we talked to you a little bit at our last update about our visual preference survey. We had a community meeting that some of you attended where we talked about this content in person, but then there was the ability for folks to weigh in online. We thought we'd take just an extra moment to talk through a little bit more of that, what we're doing with that information right now. As a reminder, we had almost 500 folks respond to that survey. We had a mix of folks who identified, community members, parents, alums, teachers, and a couple students as well. So what we did was we put up these pairings of different facilities, and the idea with one of these types of surveys is that you're trying to make the images as similar as possible as far as like 2 images of a front entry, but maybe there's different architectural features. And so you're just trying to get folks' gut reaction between 2 images. And so the boxes in red represent, right off the bat, the first one's wrong. It was option 1. So, yeah, you don't have
I'll treat you. It'll even it out.
right.
So
Van White. So on the left, that was the one that was preferred. And so you can kind of see in that image, us as architects, as we're looking at that, we might be looking at the more traditional detailing of the image on the right versus the left, the slope of the roofs, kind of more formal and traditional versus maybe a little bit more contemporary and open. So you can kind of see as we go through these options, generally the option that was selected leaned a little bit away from what you might consider a more traditional school building design with red brick or like the Georgian colonial look. That wasn't really the preference that we were getting. So in red, those boxes represent the image from the pairing that was preferred by the survey members. In most cases, by a decent majority, some over 3/4. So we didn't have a lot that were like neck and neck. Folks were pretty consistent with their visual preferences that they had. So again, we were trying to get folks' idea on maybe color of materials, type of materials, shape of roofs, all those types of things. So these were some of the additional pairings. And then I put a slide together here at the end that kind of summarizes what we took from which images were preferred. And that was this slide here. So the images on the right are all the favorites. So when you kind of pull those together and study them, much more contemporary in form and material. Some interesting layering that might happen between the area of the building that you enter into versus kind of the taller volumes kind of layering themselves as you step back. A lot of focus more on like the verticality. So the windows might be kind of more in the vertical orientation on a lot of these images. Definitely what we call low slope roofs. So we didn't see a lot of traditional gable roofs or pitch roofs being the preference at all. In fact, none of those show up on the preferred images, and we did put a few of those into the presentation. Use of glass in certain areas to denote entry or maybe gathering spaces. And then generally more neutral materials and color. Again, we didn't have our traditional red brick options jumping to the forefront, and color for our youngest students. So these are just a summary of those results. And then we did have kind of a culminating question for each building where we asked if you had one word to describe the look of the outside of the building, what would it be? And we gave the same choices for each building. For pre-K and 2, the number 1 response was colorful. For the middle school, the number 1 response was modern and contemporary. And for high school was also modern and contemporary. And you can see, those are pretty big margins that those were the common kind of answer. And we did have words like traditional, brick, glassy, sophisticated. So you can kind of see there's a strong consensus that more kind of cleaner, simple, more contemporary look is what was preferred. So what we wanna do with that information right now is essentially continue to detail what the outside of the building looks like for you all. Because we think it's important that the folks who, supported this bond issue and are attending these schools have a say in what they look like. So that's our goal. So it would be our goal the next time we come in front of you, when we know, we'll present how we're tracking on our budget, and we will give you all a preview also of what the exterior is looking like. And our goal is that you can really see some ties into what we heard and what things are looking like. So that is where we are on the design development portion.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Looking at the designs, because I love them, when we're looking at the roofs, just to make sure we're not having any of the same issues that we're having now with leaking and things like that, is that gonna be taken into account? Because again, a lot of these, they look flat, but I'm sure you can design them to where they aren't, but I know they're not, they look flat, but I know they're not flat, but it's just we're taking that into account to make sure that we're not gonna have the same issues we're having now.
Absolutely, yeah. None of the roof systems that are being proposed are any of the roof systems you have in your existing facilities. They're all tapered insulation. They do have internal roof drains as part of that system, but I think some of the main differences are the actual material of the roof. It's a single ply membrane. We haven't really gotten to the details of what chemical, which type of composition or material. We'll be reviewing that in the coming months, because when we get into design development, we write specifications for every material that's on the building. So that's what we'll be doing. So right now we're at the point of time where the decision that we've kind of made based upon not only what we've learned here, but just, a lot of what we're seeing in current school construction from a durability standpoint, is again what we call a low slope roof. So from the street, it has a visual appearance of, like any of these here, where it has a visual appearance of maybe being more flat. But what's going on behind that brick wall is not in fact a flat surface, it is a sloped surface.
Okay. I know over the years things have changed, but I know that will also be a question of, well, it looks like that, but I know we're taking that into account, so that's great to hear.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences in how those systems can work and be installed today versus when your current buildings were built. And I think from our experience, we've also learned that just by simply sloping the roof, there's a whole nother host of issues that can happen with asphalt shingle high pitched roofs. And so we think this is going to be a good system for you that'll be durable and have a good long warranty on it. And one of the things that I think is also nice about the way we're going about this with our construction team is that they're reviewing our details every step of the way as we're detailing out the roof system. And then the district has an independent third-party commissioning agent who will be in charge of essentially monitoring the installation of that roof and confirming that it was installed the way it was supposed to be installed per the design document. So that's another thing that probably wasn't happening when these buildings were built. So that's another voice, I guess, and another set of eyes.
Perfect, thank you.
Anything else?
I was just gonna mention in the visuals of the aerial layouts. We did see them on Saturday, and that was good to kind of take in for a bit. But I did have one question. I did ask a question in that meeting, and I just wanted to make sure community that says knows that I saw on the first slide, I don't know if we can go back to the middle school slide there. One thing I noticed is that there's no indication of sidewalks or pathways for children who have to walk. And so, we have all these driveways and whatnot, and just so that children understand the safety of those, because they'll have to cross, even if I'm looking from the south side, they have to cross 2 driveways right there, as well as parents are pulling in. And some parents, I know they're rushing in a hurry, but sometimes people whip in pretty quickly. So I was just bringing that as a safety aspect too, so that they can cross those driveways safely as well.
We can absolutely take that into consideration. I think it's our intent as we get through each phase to kind of zoom in and provide more detail. So, it's a great point. You're right. It's not we're starting to indicate them some places, but we don't really have the whole site developed. So that's a great comment. And as we move forward, we'll certainly show development there too.
And the other thing, and this is more so to the core team and not necessarily design, but one thing I do see, I know there's the outdoor learning space, however, there's still no like play space, like playground. Middle schoolers still need some type of outdoor play, and more specifically 6th graders. They still need that time for recess and play. So it was just something to put out there. Has that been considered?
We have not heard that as far as from the architectural design team. We have not heard that request. I think that right now what's indicated is more of that like connection to some of the outdoor recreational areas and the outdoor learning area. But you are correct. We do not show a playground on this site.
And I only bring it up because I've even seen, when I was in 6th grade at Aurora, we had the tunnels, we had a playground, everything. It's important for children at that age to still play, is why I'm bringing it up. And the more that I travel around, I see middle schools, even in this county, in Cuyahoga County, that have playgrounds. And it's essential. I mean, and they're close by districts that have playgrounds at their middle schools. So I'm just putting it out there. I think it should be considered. I think it's something that also I understand there's a master plan and all that too. But outdoor play, especially for 6th graders, is essential. And especially when they're doing that change from elementary into the middle school space.
As I feel like I shared, even on Saturday, I feel like all the feedback we get is important, and for us to continue to present things in as many venues as possible, so we do have those questions of that nature. As they come up, we also gotta consider like where's that's LFI.
Yeah, that would.
So
This would be.
That would be LFI.
that's not why it was considered at that point, and but maybe on the back end, if there's some funding, because it would come from classroom space.
Gotcha. Can you explain what LFI, and I'm reusing an acronym, but for community purpose? What
Yeah,
LFI means?
so every dollar that we plan for within the master plan that you would get credit for from the state of Ohio in the future would come out of what's called our co-funded budget. So all of our academic classroom space, a certain number of parking spots, it gets pretty prescriptive of what the state's gonna co-fund, and there's certain things they won't co-fund. So things like your board office and your auditorium that's in the master plan, things like that, the state will not co-fund. So in the future, you wouldn't be receiving credit for building those items. So when we say LFI, it just means locally funded initiative. So it means you're not gonna get credit from the state of Ohio. Dr. J is correct for the middle, for all these buildings we're following the Ohio School Design Manual, and they do not they don't have it as a requirement for middle school in the design manual. So that's why kind of out of the box, we didn't show it. And again, I think as we're hearing comments about how folks might want to use the site or ways we can take advantage of things that are there existing, like for example, the existing track and field that's on that site, that's a great asset, and I think it was a wonderful purchase that the board made to acquire this site, because they would never co-fund like a football field or a track or things like that. So I think we're trying to push that with the space we have on the site. We're saying, oh, a baseball field could fit here. Let's try to utilize existing track and field. So maybe we can, as a design team, try to challenge ourselves to think about where's the best location for whatever you want to call it. Like, you know, play doesn't necessarily have to happen on like a jungle gym structure. So like, what can that outdoor space, how can the outdoor space be best utilized? I think is a great challenge for us within our budget. So. Oh yeah, the question was, what is LFI? And I just talked for 5 minutes, sorry.
I think you said it, but
Yeah.
you
You said it, but you explained it.
explained it.
You went around the track and
What
explained
does
it.
the acronym stand for?
It's perfect.
Funded by
Right.
Funded
Locally
by-
funded.
Yes,
Right,
local
locally
dollars,
funded,
yes,
right.
yeah.
in layman's terms.
You know how they do.
Locally funded. Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. It's always important to be updated, and I just hope people are really tuning in to hear these updates. We're trying to bring it to the community, of course, through our board meetings, and in your community, we're there.
And
All
I
right,
think one of the good things that came up that, and I know you guys are very busy, but they did ask because, they do have the community engagement events, and so I thought that was very good that GPD came to Bedford, and so it would be nice if throughout the year, if maybe they could go to,
Oakwood would be next,
yeah,
and then Bedford Heights, and back to Walton Hills. So maybe we have one every month of the quarter, but if you could just come to one for each municipality, that would be, I heard it went very well on Saturday. Very good questions, great presentation, thank you. And I think it's important to the community. We'll try to get the word out to get more people, but you know, if, like I said, if one shows up, they're gonna tell one will tell another, so thank you for that, so we appreciate it. All right. Next on the agenda, I just want to say that I will have to leave for your presentation, and so Mrs. Macklin will close the meeting out. But we do have 8.02, which is Autism Fellowship, and Mrs. Armstrong will come up and give the presentation. And board, there's still new and old business for the board, so thank you. I didn't want to walk out when you start, so I'm just gonna. Oh, gotcha, okay. Now the paper ones are kind of. Did she take all the copies? Oh, did I take?
No, I was taking one.
Sorry. Oh, and I just want to say that I did see the, Bear Academy sign in Mount
Oh,
Zion,
yeah.
yes, it was really nice, really nice.
All right, thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is our first day in-house, and we're very excited to be back for a new school year. Just to review a little bit, what I'm talking about today is about last March, I got a cold call from a lady named Lisa Welch. She's from the Success for Autism program, and it's a school out in Willoughby, and they work specifically with students with autism. She said that out of House Bill 33, they were given a considerable grant to teach 5 agencies in the whole state this Success for Autism approach. And one of our, state representatives said that Bedford is doing some really great things and that she should reach out to Bedford, so she did. And we have become very close colleagues because this is a very exciting program. So the Success for Autism program, like I said, is out in Willoughby. It is a school, a lot of students there are on scholarship. And what they are doing, they've actually been there for over 30 years, but people are starting to notice what they're doing because they have a multidisciplinary approach in working with students with autism, and they're finding through their research and their practice that. And so what they would like to do is come in and offer us a fellowship and teach us the process as well. So this was a little bit of an involved process. We went over there and looked at them, and it was pretty amazing, the things that the kids were doing. We saw a young lady who was just about to lose it, as some of our students do in class, and they had a speech therapist and an OT go over there, and within a couple of seconds whatever they did with her that they were going to teach us, she was happy as can be, and she was working on the activity that they had expected her to work on. So we were very, very impressed. We were like, oh wow, that would have been a meltdown in our building. So we are so excited. Then we had to go through a pretty intense interview process with their staff. And I'm like so excited to say, like, we didn't even finish our interview and they're like, we love the BEAR program. So we were the first, they were going to interview everybody and then make decisions, but by the end of our interviews, they said, you're in. So we did get the fellowship, and we're very excited about that. It's a 14-month program, and we have to provide an interdisciplinary team. So the team was 4 people, a teacher, an occupational therapist, a speech and language therapist, and a mental health person. So we do have those 4 people. But again, in working with us, the Successful Autism Program, they were very excited about the things that we're doing in the BEAR program. And so they have given us the opportunity to provide a second team, which allows for all of our paraprofessionals to be trained in this method as well. So everybody at the BEAR program will be going through this training together. So what that entails, it's a 14-month program, and they will be working with us hand in hand. The first 12 hours or so is coursework. So all of our people will be taking the coursework on the different theories that they work with, and then we're going to start hands-on. They're going to send their master teachers over here to work with us. They're occupational therapists, they're speech therapists, they're mental health therapists, and they're going to model and teach us with our students. And then we are going to go over there on professional development days, on different days throughout the year, and continue practicing those skills. And then in the summertime, our staff will be going over to their agency in Wycliffe, and they will be working hand in hand with them to hone their skills even better. So that, I'm very excited about this program. This is going to be a very neat thing. We are going to be leaders in this area, and this BEAR program is going to be something to look at. So I'm very, very excited. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. You said there were 4. There was a teacher, mental health, and who were the other 2 that?
Occupational therapy and speech therapy. This actually came out of the occupational therapy world.
So I do think this is a great opportunity to be involved in. My question is, once these 4 gain the KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities, once they obtain those, would they be able to utilize and keep this to also move into like our intervention specialists and our paraprofessionals in the special ed and inclusion courses, the classes? Because what I'm hearing, it can still apply even though, because many behaviors from autism outside of others can correlate with those of ADHD and any other abilities and or exceptionalities that children have. After that information is obtained and they go back for the furthering, is that an opportunity to then now where they can teach or keeping the system that they can then share, be the SMEs, and then maybe professional development to train our IS and their pros, and building psych and all that, and that's part of those components as a team.
That's the plan. We're going to be the expert and the leaders in the field, so we definitely want to share this knowledge with as many people as possible. But the one thing I did leave out is because it's a grant, they will be paying our staff $4,000. So what you'll see at the next, at your next board meeting is, we're still working on the language a little bit with them, but the contract will be approved next week at the board meeting.
And the 4,000 covers the entire fellowship?
Yeah, so what they'll do is when they finish the coursework, they'll get a little bit of money. When they finish the on-site, they'll get a little bit of money, and at the end of next summer, they'll get the rest of it.
Very good incentive.
I think that's a great question in terms of building that capacity. It's a must because the BEAR program was not to be a forever place. The ultimate goal is for our students to be in their least restrictive environment. So I think that would be imperative to be able to have staff with those same skill sets to work with our children, regardless as to what environment that they're in.
Exactly, and especially the mental health component, working with the social workers, as well as our resource officers and our security. I think that's great because every person who interacts with a child is an educator. And so if, that could be built across the team, I think a lot of things would change over time to assist with that.
I think it's a great program. I think that autism is really something that some people don't understand until it happened to someone in your family. You don't realize what it is. But I really think it's a great program, and I hope we continue this and keep working with our autistic kids because they need it. They really need it. So a lot of people turn their backs on them or say something to them that shouldn't be said, like the bus driver that went back to the lady on the bus because the baby had autism. She was having one of her little tantrums, and he wouldn't let her run the bus on the RTA, which was wrong. But I mean, people have to look at people for who they are and what they are. That's what this world needs to come to. But I think it's a great program, and I hope you continue it. Thank you.
And just on that last page is just a fun little picture of our kids, our inaugural class, and with their Uno with the dog, their therapy dog.
As Sharon was saying, I wanted to real quickly understand what you're saying and speaking to is neurodiversity. And we all need to be more adept into understanding what neurodiversity is and what it looks like. Because we all do not learn, think, or respond the same, and a lot of them can be attributed to various exceptionalities that all of us have, whether they're seen or unseen, and that's the ones that really get glossed over is the unseen. So I like that we are supporting neurodiversity in this way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any old business, any new business, any business?
I was going to help you roll into that actually with my awarenesses of month.
Just this Friday is the golf outing, and so put on by the foundation, and the scholarships will go towards our high school students. They still are taking donations for baskets, things of that nature. Or if individuals still want to golf and so forth. So that, again, that's this Friday that will be occurring. We had our retreat. The administrators, it was very, very busy, but I hope it was insightful for the team. They had a lot of good feedback. I did give each of you a copy of the text that was written by Dr. Anthony Mohammed. He does a lot of work with professional learning communities. Last year we had an administrative academy. All the administrators went through the book study, Time for Change. This is a second edition of his first book, Transforming School Climate and Culture. So this is the second one, but I wanted you to also have a copy of it because we will be doing the study with this book now. We will also be having him come back and work with our staff as well. We just feel that it's really imperative for us to really take a deep dive into the specific needs of our students and continue taking it to the next level and truly talk about the difference between climate and culture, because a lot of times people intertwine those and it's really not the same. And so it will go really hand in hand with a lot of the work that Dr. Glover did. She worked with the principals today, and there's some more work for her to do with our staff as well at the beginning of the school year. We just really don't want a one-stop shop. Like, this is ongoing work. When we talk about equity, inclusion, and everything, we just need to continue that to the next level. And a lot of it, the focus, I mean, we were pretty blunt, it comes from leadership. So there's a lot of work to be done, and so we felt that that was imperative to start there.
And
announcements for the month. Just wanted to bring light to the awarenesses. This is National Golf Month, and so that's rolling right into the foundation's announcement of the golf outing on Friday. So National Golf Month, new student orientation, National Immunization Awareness, and National Eye Exam Month. So this is perfect in the month of August before going back to school. I thought it was great. Even the sports took a moment last week to make sure everyone had their physicals. So that's very, very, very important, and especially great at the start of the year. International Relaxation Day. Oh, let me start back. International Youth Day is on the 12th. So let's celebrate our youth and impact them. Also, this is a great year and time before students go off to college to get voter registrations and also vote by mail ballots applications. If they don't have a plan to be home between October 8th, which is early voting, and November 5th, which is the election day, if they don't have a plan to be home within those time periods, then go ahead and make sure your child or anyone, neighbor you know, has a vote by mail ballot application. Then also it is on the 15th, which also is our board meeting, is National Relaxation Day. So everyone, this is going to be a great new year that we're starting. Go ahead and make sure you're celebrating and relaxing and getting all self-care and R&R before the start of the school year. And then I just want to point to the 26th of the month is Women's Equality Day. So those are my announcements for awareness.
Mrs. Boynton asked me to answer a couple of the questions that came up at the, you had, Mrs. Boynton and, Mrs. Turner Birch had the community engagement night, at Walton Hills. And so she gave me a couple of questions. One of the questions, was in regards to, because we just had that presentation in terms of the bond and the facilities update, was, misunderstanding of the verbiage in the 5-year forecast about, no.
It was in the deficit plan, the original one. That
well,
was done in May.
it was in the workbook, the written
written
plan
plan,
in
yes.
relationship to the forecast. But it was about the 75%. There was communication, in the community that we're using 75% of the bond for salaries. That is not true. That is not the case. Mrs. Armstrong had communicated during her presentation, and it states in the document that 75% of Mr. Ellsworth's salary is being utilized as it can be permitted for the bond. A lot of times, districts will have representatives work for them. We talked about that in a lot of our community meetings, an owner's rep. I just would task individuals to look at the salaries and the cost of an owner's rep, which that money would be pooled hundreds of thousands of dollars from that bond, and therefore we just talked about LFIs and things of that nature. So we would be pulling money from the bond that would be used for student instruction instead of, and so forth. So we felt like that was being fiscally responsible to have someone that had been very well versed in building schools, was familiar with Bedford City School District, and so forth. So that came up. One of the other questions came up about enrollment, a couple of them. I will double check again. I don't want to make up numbers, but I know we're asked constantly, Tabby, how many kids attend Walton Hills, so we can make sure that you guys have the updated enrollment in the next couple of weeks once we're done with student enrollment. But we do have more students attending Bedford City Schools, I know of last year, that live in Walton Hills than they probably previously had. So we'll definitely make sure that you guys get those numbers. Obviously, it's in no comparison to the other 3 communities. Most of our students live in Bedford Heights, Bedford, and then the third would be Oakwood Village. So we'll get those numbers for you. Also in relation to enrollment, there was a question about how on the ODE, it states that we only have 2,600 kids. We just ask the individuals keep in mind that the state and federal government do not fund preschool. So those numbers are not in our enrollment. Right now, I start getting the weekly enrollment updates from EMIS. We're at about 2,750 students right now. That is not with us considering we don't have our kindergartners. We don't have our preschoolers. So we're taking a look at that. For example, Central, I think there's 75 kindergartners enrolled, but at the building, last year was like over 100 and some. So people got to consider that as well, but that is why there's a difference in the numbers on the state website. They're also laxed in terms of their enrollment and what they're updating on the website and so
Can you
forth.
go back to one thing, because to be more specific, so it doesn't come back up again, to be more specific, it was the difference of about 200 so students compared to, in which they said are enrolled. And so the question was, why is there such a big number outside? And you kind of said some of that, and is that preschool numbers? So 260 something preschoolers are occupied in these buildings, and that's what that deficit
It's
is.
probably, yeah, that's typically the difference.
Okay, all right.
That's typically the difference that you're seeing in there. Also, one of the things that we also just gotta make sure in terms of our students, we had a meeting today where we talked about EMIS and coding and things of that nature, because sometimes what they are seeing on the website is different. We also talked about, for example, the number of administrators. Well, if you go by ODE's coding, anyone with that title administrator, for example, we have administrative assistants, and there's specific definitions that you have to utilize in terms of how you code things. So it may not mean that it's truly an administrator, but the title is administrative assistant and things of that nature. So just some differences when you're looking at the ODE data. I know that, yeah, a lot of times, right. The enrollment's outdated, even who the people are that they say are working in the district is outdated. I know that people have put in public records requests before, so we have the live, updated, true data. So
The only thing I'll say is a lot of times in those written plans, 5-year forecast, that is the data we have at that time. That number, the enrollment is a constant moving number in the school district, so it just depends on at what time you're looking at that data.
that's true.
So it's just a screenshot, basically, in that real time. Was there another one? Those top ones, okay. I believe that was, I think that was right.
I know, she said there was a report card question, but she wasn't for sure what the report card question was.
It was just saying that where are we? And I explained that we have received the Momentum Award, but it was more of, paying money for these buildings. We want to make sure that the educational climate is getting better, or the standard of curriculum is growing or trending in the right direction. Because previous information was being, vocalized about how things were being run and things were being done. And so I had to reiterate that there has been a whole shift with new administration period across the top down. And so it's gonna take some time to really see overall the impact, however, that the high school did receive the Momentum Award. And that was one of the main buildings that were kind of brought up around the topic, around what it's like inside of the buildings. And so we had stated, even with a brand new principal, a lot of things have shifted in this space and are trending in the upward fashion. So that was pretty much what that was, and they just want a confirmation of what that looks like. Once again, board meetings, Harrington does a really good job with presenting on those details, but I don't know if you want to add.
Yes, we also will continue to put out the quality profile that has some very specific information in there about what we're doing and how we're doing it. We also will continue, I think, just like tonight, all of our presentations are live. The building principals come once a year, and they're kind of split up to go over it, but we also will have Mr. Harrington come back and do some follow-ups, because the one sad part is that you would hope that it's not a roller coaster. But unfortunately, as districts like Bedford and some others do better, it's the target shifts. For example, we did so well, Bedford and districts like Bedford, one, they took our money, and then secondly, they changed our target. So our progress rating was a 4, so what did they do for urban districts?
Of course, raised it.
They removed it. They no longer utilize that as a measure. So what does that do to you? That makes your overall percentages decline. So you told us that we had to progress by so many years. We were ahead of the game, and what do? You change the game.
So now it's like we're starting over.
And we're starting over, and so things of that nature. So we will continue to work hard in terms of the curriculum. They want to know about the curriculum, and is it of standard and high quality? Well, the state decides our curriculum. Now we have to, they choose with the vendors that we go through. They choose the reading curriculum, what's in the curriculum. So everything is driven by state standard and at the state level in terms of even who we purchase our curriculum through.
Yeah, we talked about that last meeting. That was
Yeah.
just seeing what we're paying for, and we could possibly do better. That's not fair. That's crazy. They don't want us to see us succeed.
There's money in failure, there's money in poverty.
Well, to end on a positive note, I want to say congratulations to our football team
Yes.
for receiving the football helmets by the Browns team. I am so excited for them. You know, they unfortunately we get a bad rep, and I hate that. But to get recognized by the Browns to get new helmets, it's amazing. So I'm really, really excited about that, and I pray that we continue to get more assistance in that manner. So, and accolades and recognition, because our students deserve it on every level. And you know, I hope that they come into this school year feeling great about themselves, being positive, and being able to show the world that, hey, don't knock us. You know, we can do this. So I'm excited for the new year.
We have some awesome kids.
We do. We have amazing kids. So I'm excited.
We also have great educators and leaders
We do.
in the district, and I just wanted to bring one light to Brian Webster, Mr. Webster, Coach Webster. He was featured in the Who's Who Cleveland of Black Cleveland magazine, and so I was looking through it and I was like, oh, so just wanted to give a kudos for the work that he's doing in the community and being highlighted.
Anything else? Okay. Can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn? Mrs. Carter?
Yep.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yep.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes. We
Thank you.
adjourn.
Great meeting.